Welcome back, everyone, to Sip and Talk. Okay, I have to start with a quick confession here. I really need to lose like 15 pounds before summer. Seriously this time.
Okay, on now. You've been saying that, for the last 3 seasons? It's always the same thing, same promises, and, well, kind of the same results, let's be honest.
Okay, fair enough. It's like my weight and my words are stuck in this endless loop.
Uh-huh. Well, they actually loops perfectly into what we're talking about today.
Right.
Language. It's amazing, right? But what happens when a phrase, like a promise or a goal, gets repeated by, say, a state for 30, 40, even 50 years? Does it still mean what it first meant?
That's a really good question.
Or does the repetition itself just become the point? Stability over actual substance.
Yeah, that hits home. Because when you listen to the language coming out of Beijing, you hear these huge, powerful phrases, peaceful rise, national rejuvenation, unifying Taiwan. They sound so solid, almost inevitable. But looking closer, it seems like they're often these really polished language bubbles designed to kind of mask the same old power logic, just dressed up differently.
Exactly. So today, our mission here on Sip and Talk is to give you, our listener, a sort of toolkit, a way to understand and, frankly, analyze these narratives that you hear all the time. We're going to dig into this Chinese-style language, see how it's built not just to describe things, but actually as a tool, a state tool for legitimacy, control, maybe even political warfare.
And how are we going to do that? We're actually playing a bit of a logical experiment. Using this technique, it's called reductio ad absurdum. Sounds fancy, but the idea is simple.
Yeah, basically using absurdity to reveal absurdity.
Right. We strip away the layers of authority, the emotion, and push the claims they make to their logical extremes. See where they break down. It often exposes these contradictions, these flaws that are kind of hidden in the official wording.
Because look, if a statement, a principle can't hold up when you apply it universally or outside its own little political bubble, then it's not really a principle, is it? It's just power talking.
An assertion of power.
Exactly. We find this language often functions like that language bubble you mentioned. It's optimized purely for rhetorical stability. It sounds strong, sounds consistent, but you apply a real logical test. It collapses. We're looking for conceptual consistency here, not just whether it sounds authoritative.
Okay, let's get into it then. Where do we start?
Well, let's go right to the core. The biggest claim, the one about sovereignty and territory. You hear this argument applied to Taiwan, but you also see echoes of it, logically speaking, in other conflicts like Russia and Ukraine. It often boils down to one idea: historical connection.
Ah, yes, the history argument.
It goes something like, this land belonged to us way back when. Yeah. Culturally, ethnically, geographically. It's ours. So unification isn't just desirable, it's required. It's inevitable.
So it's appealing to old empires, ancient maps, stuff from centuries ago, rather than, current reality or international law.
Exactly. But that's where the whole thing becomes logically dangerous, right? If ancient history or claims from hundreds of years ago become a legit reason for one country today to just absorb another,
then the whole system of modern nations just falls apart. Chaos.
Total chaos. This is where we bring in that absurdity weapon.
Yeah.
The neighbor's house analogy. Let's flesh this out a bit.
Right. So imagine I claim I have the right to unify my neighbor's house. Why? Because some map from the Yuan dynasty, or maybe even just a local document from 100 years back, showed our great-great-grandparents shared the land the village was built on.
Any court today would laugh you out of the room.
Right.
It's ridiculous when you talk about property rights.
Completely.
Yet that's often the kind of historical distance we're talking about with some of these geopolitical claims based on entities that haven't existed for centuries.
And if you actually tried to apply that, past maps equal present rights logic globally.
Catastrophe. Imagine Europe. Borders would be constantly redrawn based on who ruled the place last. Romans, Ottomans, Habsburgs.
Yeah.
Every 50 years, a new map based on some old empire.
It becomes this global free-for-all, like every nation digging up old grievances. Should China unify Mongolia because of Genghis Khan and the Yuan dynasty? Should the UK try to reclaim its empire?
That's the absurd but logical conclusion if you use ancient history to define modern statehood. We call it the time travel fallacy.
Time travel fallacy, I like that.
Yeah, you're trying to use claims from a collapsed dynasty, a dead political entity, maybe based on totally different ideas of law back then, to justify actions now in the 21st century. It mixes up historical presence with modern legal rights.
So the really critical point, the takeaway for everyone listening has to be this. modern sovereignty. It's about present international law and, crucially, the will of the people living there now.
Right. Not about the shifting borders of emperors long gone.
Not about dusty old maps.
Exactly. When a state ignores the current legal framework, like, say, the UN Charter's principles on self-determination, and ignores what the actual inhabitants want democratically, well, it stops being a legal argument.
It just becomes about power, historical grievance fueling a power play.
Purely political assertion. And this focus on history, it naturally leads to cherry picking, right? A very selective reading of history and international law.
Ah, yes. Let's talk about that. Because you hear certain documents mentioned all the time.
All the time. Like the Cairo Declaration from 1943, or the Potsdam Proclamation from 1945. These were statements made by Allied leaders during World War II about post-war plans. Beijing often holds these up like their legal gospel, proving their claims, especially regarding Taiwan.
Treating them like they're ironclad international law.
But here's the legal distinction that gets conveniently blurred in all the political noise. Cairo and Potsdam were political statements, expressions of intent by wartime leaders. They weren't and aren't legally binding international treaties.
Okay, so what is legally binding then?
Well, that's where you get the San Francisco Peace Treaty of 1951. This one is a legally binding treaty, signed by Japan and 48 allied nations. It formally ended the war and, very importantly, sorted out what happened to Japan's former territories.
And what did it say about Taiwan?
Crucially, Japan formally renounced all rights, title, and claim to Taiwan and the Pescadores Islands. It gave them up.
But did it say who got them?
Ah, that's the key. It didn't. Japan renounced the territory, but the treaty did not explicitly transfer sovereignty to the PRC, or the ROC for that matter.
So, legally speaking, Taiwan's status was left undetermined.
Pretty much. Undetermined by that treaty anyway. The legal implication many draw is that its future should be decided by the people living there, according to principles like self-determination and through the international community.
So by constantly emphasizing the political statements like Cairo and Potsdam and downplaying or selectively interpreting the legally binding San Francisco Treaty,
they construct a historical narrative that perfectly supports their claim, while basically ignoring the parts of international law that complicate it. It's effective storytelling, very powerful rhetorically, a much weaker foundation than they make it sound.
Okay, so we see the logical flaws, the selective history. Now, why? Why are these powerful, sometimes circular phrases so important? You said they're governing tools.
Primarily governing tools, yeah. Communication is secondary. They serve, I think, three really core political functions for the ruling party.
All right, let's break down this triad. Function 1.
Emotion management. This is maybe the biggest one. It's not really about specific policies. It's about making people feel a certain way.
Like protected, proud.
Exactly. Proud, protected. Part of some grand historical mission. Think about phrases like national rejuvenation or the China dream. They're emotional rallying cries. They're designed to build this sense of national pride, unity, and maybe most importantly, obedience by shaping a collective psyche.
Okay, makes sense. Function 2.
Enemy creation. This is absolutely vital for maintaining internal stability, especially for regimes that might face internal problems or economic challenges.
You need someone to blame.
Always. If something goes wrong inside the country, a protest, maybe the economy slows down, housing market issues, you need to immediately point outward. That's where external forces comes in. It's like a rhetorical blank check.
A catch-all excuse.
It lets the regime shift blame instantly. Avoids any real talk about internal structural problems, keeps people looking outward for threats, not inward at the government's performance.
Clever, in a way. And the third function?
Legitimizing power. So if you've successfully managed emotions, got everyone feeling proud and united, and you're constantly pointing fingers at these external enemies trying to tear the nation down,
then anything the government does seems justified.
Pretty much. Aggressive diplomacy, more censorship, huge military spending, it all gets framed as necessary, essential for protecting sovereignty or achieving that great rejuvenation. The language basically gives them the moral green light for their actions.
And this isn't new, right? This whole propaganda system goes way back.
Oh, definitely not new. You have to trace it back to the ideological roots of the Communist Party, especially from the Mao era. The whole system, media, education, foreign policy, everything is seen as part of this ideological total war.
Total war.
In the sense that the core philosophy is clear. Propaganda isn't primarily about telling the truth, either to the world or its own people. The goal is to create and maintain a unified reality, a narrative that serves the party's goals.
Wow. Okay. That leads us straight into the big paradox of peaceful unity, doesn't it? Sounds so nice, so harmless.
Right. But historically, it's always been linked to a threat. That phrase or versions of it really came into focus with the 1979 message to compatriots in Taiwan. Big moment.
Big commercial.
Exactly. But here's the thing. Right from the start, that peace slogan was paired with military posturing, the explicit statement that they reserve the right to use force.
That's so peaceful then.
And crucially, with this comprehensive political warfare strategy called the United Front.
Okay, the United Front. We should probably explain that a bit more, because it's not just about military threats, is it? It's much broader.
Much broader. It's a total political warfare approach. The goal isn't just military intimidation. It's about psychological and political absorption. It involves things like cultural co-option, trying to blur the lines, make Taiwan's culture seem just like a part of the mainland's.
Economic leverage, too.
Huge part. Using trade, investment to create dependency, media influence, funding news outlets, placing agents, trying to shape public opinion from within, and political infiltration, trying to influence or recruit Taiwanese politicians, business leaders.
So the aim is to achieve unity without actually fighting, but through this massive ongoing campaign of pressure and influence.
That's the idea. So when the peace offer always comes with that threat of force hanging over it and this systematic absorption strategy running alongside it,
it stops being a genuine peace offer.
It becomes what we call forced quiet, right? If you need overwhelming pressure and military readiness to get your version of peace, what you're really demanding is compliance, not real reconciliation.
Which explains Taiwan's response over the years, that strategic ambiguity often summed up as the three no's.
No contact, no negotiation, no compromise.
Why was that so important for Taipei back then?
Well, think about it. If you agree to contact or negotiate under those conditions, where force is still an option for the other side, and the end goal of absorption is already decided by them, you're basically validating their whole framework.
You're playing their game by their rules.
Exactly. The three no's was Taiwan's way of saying, look, we see the military threat, we see the political warfare, and we're not going to have a conversation where the outcome, our disappearance as a separate entity, is already decided by you. It denied Beijing the PR win of claiming political progress while keeping the military pressure on.
Okay, that context is crucial. Now, let's put on the logical safety goggles, as you said. Time to break down these phrases systematically.
Let's do it. The 7 language traps. We'll use our 3-step process. State the claim, dismantle the logic, and then hit it with a comparison or some data. Let's take our time here.
Agreed. Where do we start? Maybe the one that claims near divine status.
Perfect. Number 1, sovereign, inviolable.
Okay, the official claim. The sovereignty of the People's Republic of China is sacred, inviolable, no interference, no challenge allowed.
Right. The logical collapse here is what we call selective sanctity. Look, under international law, the UN Charter, sovereignty is supposed to be reciprocal. If your sovereignty is sacred, untouchable.
Then everyone else's should be too.
Exactly. You have to give the same absolute respect to every other nation's sovereignty, big or small. But if you claim only yours has this special VIP status, while at the same time you're, say, infringing on others' territorial claims or messing with their internal affairs,
then it's not a principle anymore.
It's just an operational assertion. It's power defining the rules for itself.
So, when they, for instance, send ships into disputed waters, fly jets into another country's air defense zone, but then scream bloody murder if a U.S. congressional group visits Taiwan, they're essentially saying,
VIP sovereignty. My sovereignty is special, yours is. Less so. My favorite analogy is still the restaurant one. Let's flesh it out. It's like walking into a global meeting, planting yourself in a chair, declaring that seat sacred, and then elbowing everyone else trying to sit nearby, yelling they're provoking your sacred butt space.
Okay, I get it.
When they use force or pressure, it's framed as maintaining sovereignty. When others defend themselves or criticize, that's provoking sovereignty. The logic only works if you're the one making the rules. If a rule only applies to you, it's not a rule, it's an order.
Gotcha. Okay, next trap. The big emotional one. The historical grand vision.
Number 2, national rejuvenation.
The official claim. The great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation. It's the ultimate goal, the dream uniting everyone, the historical duty of all citizens.
The logical collapse. This is just dangerously vague nostalgia. Rejuvenation sounds amazing, right? Powerful emotional pull. But what does it actually mean in policy terms?
Yeah, rejuvenate to what exactly?
Precisely. Which historical period are we talking about reviving? The Han or Tang dynasties? Glory days, sure, but also massive expansionism suppressing neighbors. Or maybe the Ming dynasty, intense economic control. How about the Qin dynasty, famous for, burning books and burying scholars?
Not exactly models you'd want to copy wholesale today.
The term avoids specifics, because defining the goal would open the door to criticism. People could ask about the methods, the costs. The vagueness is the point.
And that vagueness has real consequences domestically, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It's used to justify crackdowns now.
Yeah.
If the goal is this undefined rejuvenation, then anything seen as un-Chinese or standing in the way Western political ideas, maybe certain cultural trends, liberal education, it all has to be purged.
So it translates into things like rewriting history books to emphasize victimhood or campaigns against Western cultural pollution in universities and art.
Exactly. The vagueness gives the state almost unlimited power over culture and thought, all in the name of this grand, undefined historical goal.
And globally, you mentioned the World Avengers League scenario.
Yeah, let's really think about that consequence. If every major power decided its main goal was historical rejuvenation, imagine modern Germany trying to bring back the Holy Roman Empire.
Or Russia pushing for all the Tsarist lands, Britain wanting its empire back.
The world would instantly descend into chaos, an endless cycle of conflicts based on historical claims and vengeance. The whole idea of rejuvenation is fundamentally destabilizing because it rejects the current world order, the one based supposedly on self-determination and existing borders. It's a recipe for perpetual conflict fueled by romantic, historical fantasy.
Makes the world sound like a really dangerous museum where everyone's fighting over the exhibits. Okay, moving on. The go-to shield against any criticism.
Yes. Number 3, external forces.
The official claim. Any problem, criticism, protests, economic hiccups, whatever, it's all because of external forces interfering in our sovereign affairs.
The logical collapse. The ultimate all-purpose excuse. It's the perfect mechanism for dodging accountability. It instantly externalizes any problem. Economy slows down, foreign meddling, human rights protests, foreign-backed conspiracy.
It's like a cognitive firewall, stops any real debate about the actual content of the issue.
Exactly. It's the ultimate diversion. Think about a huge company. If the CEO responded to every single internal critique about bad management, pollution, falling profits by just yelling, "Shareholders are external forces interfering with our management freedom,"
they'd be laughed out of the boardroom. Fired, probably.
Right. But when a state does it, it works differently. It becomes a political silencer. It subtly reframes dissent as disloyalty and disloyalty as potentially treasonous, linked to foreign plots.
The student yelling at the teacher comparison still works well here.
It does. Kid caught playing games during a math test yells, "Teacher, you're an external force interfering with my autonomous learning." Any disagreement, any suggestion for doing things better is immediately labeled a foreign conspiracy. It kills any chance for critical self-reflection, which is necessary for any real progress. Suspicion replaces analysis.
Okay, next up, let's tackle those two big global slogans together. They really show the contradiction in action.
Good idea. Number 4, peaceful rise community of shared future for mankind.
The official claim. China is committed to a peaceful rise, will never seek hegemony, and is building this wonderful community of shared future for mankind.
The logical collapse. Pure contradictory action. You just can't logically claim a peaceful rise while simultaneously engaging in a massive military buildup, constant missile tests, aggressively expanding your footprint in places like the South China Sea, and deploying this hyper-aggressive wolf warrior diplomacy that ticks off everyone.
The actions just cancel out the words.
Completely. It's the loving bully with an AK-47 problem. You can't stand up and say, "I love you all, let's peacefully build a future together," while brandishing a huge weapon and threatening anyone who disagrees with your definition of future.
That explains why other countries find it so hard to trust commitments.
Absolutely. If your definition of peace includes military coercion as a valid tool, then the word peace loses all practical meaning in diplomacy.
And what about the community of shared future? That sounds so positive, so cooperative.
It sounds utopian. But in practice, it's highly conditional. It really translates to conditional cooperation. We'll have a shared future, provided you align with my political system, my economic model, my views on human rights, my definition of sovereignty.
So if you disagree, if you criticize their human rights record, or maybe don't want to join their economic projects like the Belt and Road,
then you're suddenly outside the human community. You're an obstacle. It's not a community built on mutual respect or genuinely shared values.
It's more like an arrangement where you have to agree with the leader.
Pretty much. It's like being invited to a huge party, but first, you have to sign this form, the party rule consent form, promising to obey all the host's rules. And those rules, they can change whenever the host feels like it based on their own needs. That's not a community. That's a hierarchy, enforced with words and money.
Okay, let's shift focus inward now, the pressure on citizens.
Right. Number 5, patriotism.
The official claim, being patriotic is every citizen's duty. True patriots support the country's leadership, meaning the party.
The logical collapse. This twists a genuine feeling, love for one's country, into an obedience test. Look, in any healthy society, real patriotism usually includes the right, maybe even the duty, to criticize constructively, to point out flaws so things can get better.
But here,
love the country gets strictly defined legally and politically as unconditional obedience to the party. If you question the party, you are, by definition, questioning the country, which makes you
a traitor.
Instantly. The burned fish analogy we talked about illustrates this perfectly. If your mom, let's say she represents the state, cooks a meal, maybe a fish, and it's a little burnt, if you love your family, you might gently say, hey, Mom, maybe try a lower heat next time. You want the next meal to be better.
Makes sense. But in this political context,
criticizing the burnt fish means you hate the family, you despise the cook, and you're probably working for the neighbor who competes with your family's restaurant. It turns helpful feedback into a crime, into subversion.
So it's like a pet obedience test.
Exactly. The best pet is the one that never barks, never questions the training, just eats whatever is put in front of it, burnt or not. This crushes innovation, dialogue, and necessary course corrections in policy.
And talking about everyone having to think the same, let's look at the ultimate collective goal, the dream.
Ah, yes. Yeah. Number 6, the China dream.
The official claim. Achieving the great China dream of national rejuvenation is the collective goal, the shared aspiration of the entire nation.
The logical collapse. The problem here is the uniform template. A dream, universally, is deeply personal, right? It's about individual hopes, unique potential, freedom. It's inherently subjective.
Your dream isn't my dream.
Exactly. But by hijacking the word dream and turning it into this mandatory, collective, state-designed blueprint, the party effectively cancels out individual dreams that don't align with the state's big-picture goals.
Creating a kind of collective sleepwalking syndrome.
That's what we called it. Everyone has to dream the same dream. National strength, economic power, loyalty to the party. What if your personal dream is different? Maybe you want a quiet life as a poet, or you want to be an environmental activist campaigning against something the state supports.
Then your dream becomes unpatriotic,
right?
Selfish, disruptive.
Precisely. The dream is no longer about individual fulfillment or creativity. It becomes an ideological tool for social control. It forces everyone's private ambitions to serve these predefined public objectives.
Okay, last one. This one seems almost designed to ignore readily available facts.
Definitely. Number 7, seeking independence is a dead end.
The official claim. Any move towards independence or self-determination which they label a conspiracy, moo-doo, is delusional, dangerous, and guaranteed to fail. It's a dead-end road.
The logical collapse. This is just pure data reversal. It's the classic sour grapes argument. First, they label the simple act of maintaining the existing reality, the status quo of self-governance, as some kind of sneaky conspiracy. Then they claim this path is a dead end.
But the facts on the ground tell a different story.
Completely different. The place they're calling a dead end, Taiwan, is objectively outperforming the place promoting the correct path, mainland China, in key areas that actually measure quality of life and global standing for ordinary people.
Let's see the numbers again. They really drive it home.
Okay. GDP per capita, basic measure of prosperity. Taiwan's is currently estimated over $36,000 USD. China's is around $13,000 USD.
Wow, that's almost 3 times higher.
It's a massive difference. Then look at global mobility, how easily citizens can travel, which reflects international trust and soft power. A Taiwanese passport gets you visa-free access to about 145 countries.
And China?
Around 85. Again, big gap. And maybe most relevant to our whole discussion today. Political freedom. Freedom House scores Taiwan at 94 out of 100, firmly in the free category.
Hey,
China,
9 out of 100.
Categorized as not free. So you look at prosperity, freedom of movement, political liberty. The place being called a dead end is thriving by comparison.
So calling it a dead end is just factually wrong.
It's the dictionary definition of sour grapes. Oh, that place doing way better than us. Yeah, they're totally on a dead-end road. The phrase isn't based on reality at all. It's purely psychological defense, projecting their own system's anxieties onto a successful democratic neighbor. It's a political claim born from necessary denial.
Okay, we've really torn apart the logic of these phrases, but it's crucial to stress this isn't just an academic exercise. This language isn't harmless, is it?
Not at all. When power controls language to this extent, it subtly, but dangerously, starts to rewrite reality itself. We need to talk about the real-world costs.
Let's start with the internal costs, the impact on people living within that system, on society's ability to think critically.
The biggest cost is probably the slow erosion of independent thought, thanks to all that airy language we discussed.
Because the terms are so vague.
Exactly. Rejuvenation, shared future, external forces, they're everywhere. Official speeches, news, schools, everyone uses them, but they lack precise meaning. They just become signals of loyalty, placeholders for authority.
Not tools for actual communication or debate.
Right. And when language loses its concrete meaning, public discussion just withers. There's no common ground, no verifiable facts to argue about.
And that's how the loyalty test starts to suffocate intellectual life.
Precisely. When patriotism equals obedience, simply asking why about a major policy can become dangerous. It feels like you're questioning the whole system, committing a crime almost.
Because questioning threatens the carefully built rhetorical stability.
The language creates a self-sealing system, resistant to any real critique from within.
Okay, let's slip to the external costs. When Beijing uses the phrase, internal affairs, no interference, how does that actually play out on the world stage, especially with big global issues?
It basically functions as a flexible shield, a way to deflect any international criticism or scrutiny. The funny thing is the paradox of it.
Yeah.
If something truly were just a simple internal matter like, say, changing local tax rates, you wouldn't need a massive global propaganda campaign and aggressive diplomacy to keep insisting it's internal.
Good point.
The louder and more fiercely a government yells internal affairs, the more usually reveals their own insecurity about how that issue actually impacts the rest of the world.
And that promise of not interfering in others' internal affairs, that often seems to morph into something else, especially economically, right? Like with the Belt and Road Initiative.
Absolutely. That's where non-interference magically transforms into what we might call investment interference. It looks like normal economic cooperation on the surface. But in practice, they push these huge infrastructure loans, often without proper checks, often with unclear terms.
Setting up debt traps.
That's the risk.
Yeah.
Countries can end up owing unsustainable amounts, and when they inevitably struggle to pay it back,
They have to give up something strategic.
often, yes. Concessions like control over a new port they just built with the loan money, or long-term rights to exploit natural resources. This creates deep financial and infrastructural dependency,
Which gives the lender huge political leverage.
immense political and even military influence, which is, by any reasonable definition, interference. But it's all wrapped up in the nice language of economic cooperation and building a shared future.
So if we pull all this together, the core problem with this language isn't just that it's illogical, but it's about what it prioritizes.
Exactly. It prioritizes the stability of tone over the consistency of concept. It needs to sound authoritative, strong, unwavering, morally right. That's more important than whether it actually makes logical sense, matches the facts, or aligns with international law.
That confident tone is what kind of tricks the ear, makes you assume the logic must be sound.
Precisely. And our whole exercise today here on Sip and Talk was about providing that little voice of doubt, that critical, logical counter perspective.
And once you see the trick, the spell kind of breaks.
Hopefully. As we wrap up, we really want to stress again, our goal wasn't mockery. It was about offering maybe a kind of logical and critical thinking vaccination for you, the listener. We took these statements that sound like solid truths.
And put them under the microscope.
Yeah, subjected them to rational analysis, showed how they can function as these sophisticated, but ultimately quite hollow, language bubbles.
And just to be crystal clear, we've presented objective facts, data, used logical arguments. This isn't about criticizing any particular nation or its people. It's about analyzing the specific words, the rhetorical tools used by a state to project power and claim legitimacy.
Because we believe true strength, whether for a person or a nation, doesn't come from silencing critics or forcing agreement. It comes from the confidence to actually answer the question, why?
Well said. And maybe a final thought for everyone listening. If you hear political language from anywhere where you feel you can't ask basic questions.
Like, what's the real cost of this? Or how specifically are we going to achieve that?
Without immediately being accused of being disloyal, treacherous, or some kind of foreign agent.
Then what you're probably hearing isn't an idea offered for debate. It's an order demanding acceptance.
Definitely something to keep in mind no matter the political environment. Well, thank you for tuning in to Sip and Talk. If you found this breakdown of political language useful, please do subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
And hey, don't forget to check out our good friend Mickey's YouTube channel, Mickytolife. He's always got fun memes, some great liquor tasting reviews, and right now he's got vlogs up from his latest European travels. Definitely worth a look.
Absolutely. We'll see you next time.